I'm Miranda, also known as Pulu, and I'll be talking about how I turned my extremely hacky computer setup into an algorithmic instrument for my music performance last night. So one half of the setup is a 2013 MacBook Air running Tidal Cycles and Super Collider 3. Super Collider, originally created by James McCartney, is this Smalltalk-inspired language for real-time audio synthesis, processing, and composition, which is also pretty good at functional programming. It's commonly used as an audio backend for the other thing, Tidal Cycles by Alex McLean, which is a Haskell EDSL for writing pattern-based music. I have a very customized version of the Tidal mode for Emacs, which lets me use a MIDI controller to start and stop patterns, tweak their parameters, as well as switch between variations of each pattern. But the other, more interesting half of the setup is a 2005 iBook running Super Collider 2 on Mac OS 9. This machine shipped with OS 10 and does not actually support OS 9. But the amazing folks on the Mac OS 9 Lives forum have figured out that by faking the CPU version and disabling the sound card with some open firmware code, which is basically Forth, you can actually boot OS 9. Now, disabling sound presents a small problem for a musician, but luckily Super Collider 2 uses ASIO drivers for sound instead of the system sound manager. And there happens to be an ASIO driver for this iMic USB audio interface that I own, so sound is sorted. Some other small problems: the touchpad doesn't work, so I have to bring a USB trackball. OS 9 also doesn't know how to control the fans, so I wrote a little open firmware routine that lets me set a fixed fan speed before loading the OS. Yet another problem is that OS 9 does not have a class-compliant USB MIDI driver, so none of my MIDI controllers work. But Super Collider can also receive OSC, and this is a UDP-based network protocol for control data. So what I do is I actually have a third computer. It's a Bella, but it could be a Raspberry Pi or whatever, to which the MIDI controller is connected. This computer runs a small Super Collider program that takes the MIDI data, translates it to OSC, and sends it to both laptops over a local network. To get video from the iBook, I have to run a mini VGA to VGA adapter. Mini VGA, by the way, is something extremely cursed. Into a VGA to HDMI converter, into an HDMI capture card plugged into the MacBook. Then I just switch over to this quick camera app that displays that video feed. I had to draw a diagram of this setup so I remember all the parts I needed to pack and connect, and I'll post that on the Photos channel in Discord for those who are curious. And you might ask, why do this? And I also ask this myself every time I'm setting up. But initially, I was just looking into the history of Super Collider and found this old version on James McCartney's website. I grew up with the classic macOS, so I was very curious to try this and ended up liking it so much that I built this high-performance system around it. It lacks the client-server architecture of contemporary Super Collider, so you don't have this inter-process barrier, and that makes it really fluid to express certain kinds of musical ideas. Also, macOS 9 is just a cozy, distraction-free environment with no notifications, no functional web browser, etc. It might crash sometimes, but that just teaches you to keep saving your work. I don't really have time to get into the programming of this system, but if you're interested, I have some 45 hours of live streams about the process in a YouTube playlist called Retro Super Collider. And you can find this and all my socials on my website, pulusound.fi. Thank you.